Good evening, all. Welcome to Shankar IAS Academy's daily editorial analysis. Here I am Munihar Ravishankar, who is presenting today's editorial analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Without any delay, let's move on to today's list of editorials. Today we are going to analyze two important editorial topics, which is about one is about global north and south divide. In that, India's role to bridging gap between global north and south, which is about international relations. This editorial is taken from the Hindu newspaper. The second article, which is taken from the Indian Express, which talks about Maoist activism in Chhattisgarh. In this article, we are going to see in detail about Maoism and its active regions with the government initiatives to reduce this Maoist activism in India. These two editorials are very important from Main's perspective. One is very important for internal security of national security, and the second article, which is very important from international organizations. So take a note on this editorial analysis. Without any delay, let's get into today's discussion. Look at this editorial, which discusses about Chhattisgarh's intensified crackdown on Maoist insurgent since last year December. It led to significant arrests and surrenders. It also highlights improved coordinations between state and central security forces, which reducing Maoist stronghold on few pockets. That also emphasizes the need for continued vigilance while ensuring civilian safety to prevent backlashes. In this editorial, we are going to see in detail about Maoist and their attacked areas and the government interventions to reduce Maoist activism in the particular areas. For that, first let's see what is Maoist. When it comes to Maoism, it was formed by a communism developed by Mao Zedong, who belongs to China. It is a doctrine to capture state power through a combination of armed insurgents, mass mobility and strategic alliances. This Maoists also use propagandas and disinformation against state institutions as other component of their insurgent doctrines. They call this process as protected people war, where the emphasis is on the military line to capture power from the government. When it comes to rural focus, it prioritized rural agrarian communities as the primary revolutionary force. This is all about the Maoism, which was defined by Mao Zedong. Now let's see some of the most affected regions by this Maoism. According to Ministry of Home Affairs, they identified following states as affected by left-wing extremism. Let's see what are they. Look at this map. This map clearly indicates the most affected areas by the Maoism. The areas are Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh and Kerala. These are the left-wing influenced states who are all affected by Maoist activism in India as per the Ministry of Home Affairs data. And this topic is very important from Main's perspective when it comes to the internal security. So take a note on this editorial. In this particular areas, Ministry of Home Affairs concentrated with this vigilance to control Maoist activism. By the result, Maoist attacks are declined. Let's see the decline of Maoist influence in these areas. When it comes to decline of Maoist influence, Maoists have lost the ground in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand and Bihar, where they once had huge influence. The next one is reduction in affected areas. That is, Maoist affected districts have decreased from 220 that was recorded in earlier 2000s. It was now less than 40 as per the Ministry of Home Affairs. The next one is violence is now concentrated in a few pockets of Chhattisgarh and Maharashtra. These two areas are only affected and vulnerable to Maoist activism in India. Now let's see some of the challenges which was faced by the Indian government to control and dealing with the Maoism. The first one is security challenges, that is entrenched insurgency, that is Maoist control remote tribal regions which creating a security vacuum and running parallel government systems. The second one is violence and intimidation. That is, Maoist cadres use terror tactics to suppress local resistance and hinder governance in that particular area. The second challenges we have to see is socio-academic challenges. It includes underdevelopment, that is lack of road, healthcare and education which fuels discontent with Maoist exploitation in that particular region. And the second one is tribal displacement. Infrastructure projects cause displacement, providing Maoist with easy recruits. Because of the tribal vulnerability, Maoists use that vulnerability and they act on that situation. The third one is administrative and ideological challenges. When it comes to administration and ideology, it is completely about governance and government actions. The first one is governance vacuum, that is weak state presence allows Maoists to dominate and control local administration. The second one is coordination issues, difference between central and state agencies who hindered counter-insurgency efforts to deal with Maoists. When it comes to ideological and perspective challenges, public sympathy and human rights concerns are the key factors which are go against this insurgency. Now let's see some of the legal frameworks to deal this Maoism in India. When it comes to legal framework, the first one is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. Its foremost objective is to prevent unlawful activities that threaten India's sovereignty. And it has followed by the key provisions. Let's see one by one. When it comes to key provisions, the first one is unlawful associations. That is, government can ban organization who disrupting national integrity. The second one is terrorist organizations. That is, CPI Maoist, who is designated as a terrorist outfit as of from 2009. Strict penalties. Government should criminalizes the membership, support and fundraising for such groups, that is insurgent groups. That is very important to reduce the Maoist activism in India. The last one is extended detention, that is allow detention without changes for up to 180 days, which is very important to take time to curb this insurgents from that particular region. The second one is Armed Forces Special Powers Act, that is AFSPA 1958 Act, which plays major role in reducing Maoist activism in India. When it comes to the foremost objective, it was objected to empower armed forces to maintain public order in disrupted areas, particularly Maoist vulnerable areas, which are all seen earlier in this topic. When it comes to key provisions, it comes up with disrupted areas, that is government can declare regions as disrupted under AFSPA Act. Because of this action, they can protect this area from Maoist activism. The second one is special powers, that is armed forces can use force arrest without a warrant and conducted researches against the Maoist. Legal immunity. Protection from prosecution without central government's approval is a big advantage to AFSPA Act and officials to move forward against this Maoist activism in India. This will reduce drastical Maoist activisms in particular areas like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh. The next legal intervention and the organization we are going to see about is National Investigation Agency Act 2008. That is National Investigation Agency Chhattisgarh Act 2008, which with the objective of establish National Investigation Agency as India's central counter-terrorism agency, with the key provisions of NAA formation, which is formally targeted the investigates offences related to national security. The second one is scheduled offences, that is it covers law like Unlawful Activity Prevention Act and Atomic Energy Act, etc. And the third one is concurrent jurisdiction. Under this agency, national investigation agency can take over state police in the case with central approval. The next one is Chhattisgarh Special Public Security Act 2005. Within the this act has the primary objective to address insurgency and maintain public order in the particular region of Chhattisgarh. Within the key provisions that are unlawful activities, that is broadly defined as actions supporting insurgent groups, which are all comes under unlawful activities within the territory of India. The next one is prevention detention, that is it allows primitive arrest of suspected individual. And also the ban on organization. Under this provision, government can outlay groups engaged in unlawful activities who are all supporting Maoist activism in India. These are all the key provisions of this Chhattisgarh Special Public Service Security Act 2005. The next act we are going to see about is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996. That is nothing but PESA Act 1996, with the objective was strengthened self-governance in tribal groups. When it comes to key provisions, it empowers Gram Sabhas, that is, it control over natural resources and local disputes in the particular village or the local governance. Consultation on land issues, that is, it requires before land acquisition in scheduled areas. Local governance, it also enhances tribal autonomy over development programs with the help of this PESA Act 1996. These are all the constitutional provisions which works against the Maoist activism in India. Now let's see some of the steps taken by the Indian government to counter Maoism security measures. First one is security measures. When it comes to security measures, it involves multiple operations and programs too, which dealing with Maoist activism in India. It is first one is Operation Samadhan, that is it focuses counter-insurgency strategy integrating intelligence, modern technology and security forces. The second one is development of CAPF forces, that is increased presence of CRPF, BSF and ITPP and the state police in affected areas will drastically decline the activism of Maoists in India. The third one is Unified Special Forces, that is like Cobra under the CRPF and STF at various states, who are all combined with state and central forces for joint operation. Now let's see some of the development initiatives. When it comes to development initiatives, road connectivity projects from left-wing extremism areas, which focuses on constructing road in Maoist affected districts. The second one is skill development schemes, programs like Roshni and skill development scheme in 47 left-wing extremism districts to provide employment to the youths. The next one is Ekaleva model residential schools, which are very essential for tribal education. It is set up for tribal children to improve educational accesses. Special central assistance, it is nothing but additional funding for left-wing extremism affected districts for infrastructure and welfare projects. With this all, let's move on to the rehabilitation and surrender policies. When it comes to rehabilitation and surrender policies, surrender and rehabilitation scheme was introduced, which is financially assisted, vocationally trained and housing support for surrendered Maoists. The second one is relief for affected families, that is compensation for civilians and security personnel who are affected by Maoist violence, which is very important for their livelihood support, which was given by the government of India. These are all the government steps which was dealing with Maoist activism in India, which also curbs left-wing extremism ideology. These are all about the Maoism. I hope you are all clear about this concept Maoism. This is very important for mains perspective. With this all information, try to write a mains question. Let's see the mains question. Maoist remains a significant internal security challenge for India. So, analyze the socio-economic and administrative factors contributing to its persistence. and also discuss the measures taken by the Indian government to counter Maoist insurgency in India. Try to write the main answer on this question and post it in the comment. We will analyze your answer and give our valuable feedback on your answer. Look at this editorial. This editorial discusses about global north-south divide, which refers to the economic and political difference between developed nation, that is global north, and developing nation, which is global south. In this, the global north consists of wealthier industrialized nations, example USA, Europe, Japan and Australia, while the global south comprises of developing and underdeveloped countries that are comes under India, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, etc. In this, India aspires to be the bridge between this global north and south gap by representing the interest of the global south while maintaining strategic partnership with the global north. This is about this editorial. We are going to see in detail about global north and south differences from Main's perspective. In this, India stands on the voice of global south and focuses on economic challenges, depth and global influences with the support of global north, and also it is strengthening diplomatic ties between both the global north and south nations. Now let's get into this editorial discussion. Now let's see first what is the concept behind global north and south divide. As I said earlier, global north and south divide is all depends upon economic and political disparities and the partiality between the developed and developing nations. And also it comprises of global north consists of developed nations, that is industrial nations, that is USA, Europe, Japan and Australia. Global south comprises of developing and underdeveloped countries, that is India, Africa, Latin America and Southeast Asia. In this, India is going to be represent the global south to maintain north partnership to the developed nations with the help of developing nations. Look at this map. In this map, we can see clearly that is global north are marked in the color blue, and the global south is marked in the color red. These are all the developing and the least developed countries. These are all the already developed nations with the industrially strong nations. We have to know about these differences. So let's get into the understanding between this global north and south divide. When it comes to the causes, the first one is colonial legacy, that is European colonization extracted resources from the global south, leaving these nations underdeveloped. Second one is economic inequality. Global north controls most global wealth, trade and technology, while the south lags in industrialization. The next one is institutional disparities, that is global financial institutions, that is IMF, World Bank, World Trade Organization favor the north, who imposing stringent conditions on the south. Climate change responsibility. Developed countries historically contributed more to carbon emission, but developing nations bear the burden of climate change. Now let's see the current issues which widen the this global north and south divide. That is unfair trade activities, which is nothing but developed countries impose protectionist measures, that is tariff, subsidies, WTO disputes against global south exports. Second one is technology and digital divide. In this, artificial intelligence, cyber security and digital infrastructures are dominated by Western corporation, leaving developing countries behind with the help of developed nations. The third one is debt crisis in developing nations. That is, many globally south nations face unstable debt due to high interest loans from global institutions. These are all the current issues and the divided between the global north and the south. Now let's see the India's role in bridging this divide. When it comes to India's role, which comprises of geopolitical leadership, economic and trade partnership, and also climate energy leadership with the help of technological development partnership. Now let's see one by one with the help of other institutions. The first one, the one is geopolitical leadership. When it comes to geopolitical leadership in G20 presidency of 2023 is very important. It prioritized global South concerns, which pushing for debt relief, food security, and digital inclusion. Second is that was hosted the Voice of Global South Summit, amplifying Southern nations' voice in global governance. The second one is BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Engagement. That is, it promotes multipolarity, which advocates for reform in global governance in institutions like United Nations, IMF, and World Trade Organization. Third one is non-alignment movement, which has their certain legacy, with India continues in non-alignment movement stands by engaging both the West and emerging economies strategically. These are all about the global leadership with respect to India's role. Let's move on to the economic and trade partnership. You can see the G20 only nations and both Global South and G20 and the Global South only nations. Yellow marks the Global South only nations, pink marks the G20 nations only, and the blue marks the both G20 and globally South nations. Now let's move on to the economical and trade partnership in global level. When it comes to economic and trade partnerships, the first one and foremost one is South-South cooperation. That is, India strengthened ties with Africa, Latin America, and Asia through trade, infrastructure project, and technological sharing. For example, India-Africa Forum Summit, which focuses on healthcare, agriculture, and skill development. This is all about South-South cooperation. The next one is WTO and trade reform advocacy. India opposes Western agricultural subsidies that distort trade, and also advocates for TRIPS waiver on COVID-19 vaccines to ensure equitable access for developing nations. The next one is Atmanirbhar Bharat and global trade. India's self-reliance strategy aims to boost domestic manufacturing while integrating with global market. These are all about economic and trade partnership with India among global South and North nations. Now let's move on to the climate and energy leadership with respect to India. When it comes to climate and energy leadership, the first and foremost thing is International Solar Alliance, which was launched by India to promote solar energy cooperation among developing economies. The second one is Coalition for Disaster Relief Infrastructure. It aims to climate-proof infrastructure in vulnerable nations. Third one is Lifestyle for Environment Initiative. That is, it advocates sustainable lifestyle to counter excessive consumption pattern of the global north. These are all about the climate and energy leadership with respect to India's role against the bridge of global South and North. Now let's see some of the technological and development partnership with global South and North of India. The first one is digital public infrastructure. That is, India promotes UPI, Aadhaar, and CoWIN models for developing countries to adopt. The second one is vaccine diplomacy. That is, Vaccine Maitri, which supplied COVID-19 vaccines to over 100 countries, which strengthened South-South cooperation. The next one is space collaboration with global South. That is, ISRO provides satellite technology and remote sensing data for African and Asian nations. This is all about technological and development partnership with India with regard to global North and South. Now let's see some of the challenges of India's role in bridging global North and South. The first one is economic limitation. That is, India itself facing domestic challenges, that is poverty, infrastructure gap, and fiscal constraints while aiding others. The next one is balancing strategic interests, that is managing ties with China, that is BRICS partnership, while contracting its influence in global South, which also include maintaining good relationship with Western allies, that is US, Europe, without alienating developing nations. This is the biggest challenge in terms of balancing strategic interest with respect to India. The next one is institutional resistance, that is Western-led financial institutions resist India to push for governance reforms. These are all the challenges which was faced by India while gapping bridge between global north and south. Now let's see some of the way forward measures to overcome these challenges with respect of bridging gap between global north and global south. India's unique position, when it comes to India's position as a developing economy strategically while global influence, India can act as a mediator. The second one is strengthening partnership, that is, it expands South-South cooperation, regional connectivity and development financing. The next one is leading global governance reforms, which continues pushing for United Nations security challenges, expansion, WTO reforms and fair financial systems. The next one is climate justice, that is promoting climate justice and sustainable growth, which advocate for equitable green finance and technological transfer between developed and developing nations. This informations clearly says India's leadership in bridging the global north and south divide is crucial for a fair, inclusive and multipolar world order. With this all, you are all clear about this global north and south dividend and India's role in this reducing gap between this developing and developed nations. With this all information, try to write a mains practice question. Now let's move on to the question. Look at this question. In an era of increasing multipolarity, unless India's potential as a conciliatory force who bridging the global north and south dichotomy. Try to write a mains answer in this question and post it in the comment. We will analyze and give your valuable feedback on that answer. Coming to the conclusion, if you like this video, hit like, do comment your valuable feedbacks and share it to your friends and family. At the end, don't forget to subscribe this Shankar IAS Academy's YouTube channel. Stay tuned for more information like this. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.